Nobody saw it coming, not like Jim Jones, the Dipset veteran and Harlem legend, now shackled and surrounded by flashing lights, was caught dead in the heart of a full-fledged narcotics investigation. It seemed unbelievable, yet the sirens and police scanners were buzzing, and the tape, grainy, raw, indisputable, showed the rapper outside a dimly lit warehouse in what officials are called the proven cocaine transaction within minutes. Burst, is this a sit-up? Was he framed? What the heck is going on? The streets of Harlem were on fire with conjecture as hip-hop fans across the world sought to make sense of it, but nothing shocked the internet more than what followed next. Camron, Jim's lifelong buddy, brother in arms, and Dipset co-founder went Lee. His expression told it all. The pause, the stiffness in his jaw, the tightness in his eyes. It wasn't just betrayal, it was grief. And when he finally spoke, the true drama began. But because Camron didn't defend him, he didn't deny it. He stated just one thing y'all don't know. Half the internet froze, and now so many questions remain. Was this years in the making or the ultimate split in a fraternity formed on loyalty? The actual tale is harsher than anybody thought. The streets of Harlem seemed colder beneath a gloomy, overcast sky. Unlike usual, when word spread like wildfire that Jim Jones had been detained in connection with the cocaine trade, most people first refused to accept it. Could the Dipset legend, the guy who had climbed from the projects to worldwide acclaim, get caught up in something so sordid? Everyone anticipated the usual whispers and petty internet discussion, but this time, there was no disputing that grainy film leaked within minutes, and the silence from Jim's inner circle further fueled the excitement. The tape was raw and stark, starting with a shaky handheld shot. Probably taken by a nearby pedestrian or security guard's phone, Jim stood by a sleek black sub in the lot behind a disused warehouse, his shadow highlighted by a single roadway. Like the individual he was seeing had a black sweatshirt face concealed, yet the transaction was evident. A little gift handed hand-to-hand. Witnesses heard a siren and the second cops crowded the scene, their credentials glinting as they yelled instructions. The hooded guy fled away into the darkness, leaving Jim with little option but to raise his hands and gaze head-on into the camera, remain still, as if daring the world to condemn him. Within seconds, the internet did what it normally does, and social media platforms lighted up with, "Is this real?" Someone wrote, "Did they frame him?" Another person inquired on Reddit. Hip-hop blogs spun speculations. Was this the power move of rival crews, an inside operation coordinated by the Fi, or had Jim slipped back into old habits? And the conjecture was limitless and unrelenting. The guy everyone wanted to hear from the most was Camron, Jim's longtime partner and friend. Remained quiet for hours. His omission of reply just made the issue worse. Was he embarrassed, complicit, or honestly in the dark? Followers and critics alike clamored for a comment. Then late that night, Camron went live on his private social account. Hundreds tuned in almost instantaneously, and there was no Camron sat alone in a darkly lit room with a poem in hand, the only sound being distant sirens. There was no dazzling background or loud soundtrack. Resounding around the city, a reminder of the mayhem brewing after what seemed like a lifetime. Camron broke the stillness. "Y'all don't know the half," he stated, voice low, and heavy comments rushed in. People pushed him to elaborate, to defend his sibling and offer background. But Camron merely gazed at the camera, his eyes conveying a combination of rage, disappointment, and something deeper, treachery. Rumors started to fly about what he meant, with some insiders whispering that Camron had attempted to warn Jim months earlier. Some believed Cam had proof of a broader plot. One thing was clear, viewers were hanging on every word, seeking for clarification amid a tempest of supposition. Meanwhile, local reporters, Jim was charged with distribution and intent to distribute an undisclosed prohibited narcotic, according to sources who were stationed outside the precinct. Had been following him for weeks. Surveillance images, phone data, and undercover informants had reportedly sketched out a network that ran from New York to Atlanta. The chemicals involved were supposed to be high-end. Designer pills are not the ordinary street drugs. Rumors in law enforcement circles stated that these pills might fetch thousands of phones, adding more video to the ever-growing avalanche of material back online. An anonymous user on a popular forum claimed to have first-hand information that Jim's been in grave danger for months. The message said tour deals kept falling through. When new album sales collapsed, he became desperate and began transferring favors. The term moving favors became an immediate meme, and some assumed it was code for making relationships. Photos from years ago showed people trading illicit drugs for cash. Jim at private gatherings with persons now known to law enforcement. Each photograph was analyzed in depth. Recently, a leaked text communication appeared between Jim and an unnamed person. The discussion was short. "But did you give the contact?" Jim said, "Just stay." Silence, no context, no timestamp, just tantalizing evidence that something clandestine had been fermenting. And a single text sent shockwaves across internet communities. Conspiracy theorists thought that the government was targeting high-profile rappers and framing them. As an example, doubters used the wording as proof of violating the line. Jules Santana, another Dipset associate, adding that the line between reality and fantasy blurred as soon as the video circulated. Adding to the curiosity, he tweeted an old picture of himself with Jim and Camron, with the comment "loyalty cuts deep." Fans argued about whether it was a sign of camaraderie or a covert criticism at Jim's apparent betrayal, and uncertainty further fueled the flames, with hashtags like #TeamJules and #WhereCome are trending across platforms amid the digital mayhem. A local nightclub organized a vigil for Jim, with guests gathering beneath flashing neon lights, wearing Dipset t-shirts and some wearing sweatshirts with Jim's face emblazoned on them. The mood was part commemoration. Part during the demonstration, a mural artist stood at an easel creating a depiction of Jim in prison. The words "Free my brother" ran in large lettering under parallel fans. I went study Jim's latest lyrics, looking for hidden hints, and words that sounded harmless took on new meaning. "I've been going through shadows" now sounded like a confession. Every line became fodder. Vloggers and podcasters argued the chronology of events extensively. Sources close to the probe hinted to prosecutors were apparently crafting a case that went beyond Jim, maybe identifying co-conspirators and disclosing a multi-state operation. Whisperers indicated subpoenas were issued to cast members of Love and Hip Hop Atlanta, and other reality programs are looking for financial documents, and correspondence revealed that Atlanta ties were Jim's arrest just added to the intrigue. Could it be part of a bigger network crackdown? Camron's voice remained the wild card following his first live, and he departed. Fans on social media speculated whether he was bargaining behind the scenes. His silence signified a divide between him and Jim. A few hours later, he wrote his narrative features a strange picture of two broken chains with no caption. Conjecture went into overdrive. Was he indicating a vacation from the gym or hinting at future? Freedom Within sources said that Rashida, a close friend and neighbor, I addressed Jim hours before his imprisonment and implored him to quit that life. He reportedly informed a confidence that it was worth the risk when approached. Rashida's representatives sent a statement expressing worry and encouraging people not to leap to conclusions. A carefully written answer did nothing to stop suspicions. As darkness fell again over Harlem, a second video slipped from unknown account. This one was recorded from inside the warehouse and shows Jim, while counting piles of cash on a metal table before sliding something into a pocket. The camera pans upward to see a Camron, a familiar figure reclining against the wall, had half of his face in darkness. Jim, lighted by a flickering bow, looked at him and nodded, as if asking permission. Camron went closer and said something inaudible, then walked away. Jim started packing and the film cut off. The news sends shockwaves beyond Harlem. If Camron had truly been there, even under the disguise of friendship, doubts arose about his role. Was he more than a passive witness, complicit, or the person who set Jim up? The internet outcry reached fever pitch. Every hip-hop journalist, fan pages, and commentators hurried to study the tape, and that's where part one ends. The minute the second video surfaced and altered everything, it wasn't just Jim Jones' tale anymore. It was Camron's story as well, and the real extent the controversy was only starting to emerge. In civilian clothing showed up to Jim's mother's apartment asking questions. Paparazzi camped out Camron's townhouse looking for a response, and the streets of Harlem, already volatile, Jim's felt like a pressure cooker poised to blow. Martinez walked the backstage as circular terror sat in his manager Tony 50/50. In the vicinity of a tiny club where Jim was slated to speak later that night, Martinez's phone rang nonstop with calls from attorneys, promoters, and concerned castmates. He eventually answered, one voice tight, "Yes, I realize we need no." He's not talking yet. "Yes, I've instructed everyone to stand down." He hung up and sank into a chair, head in his hands, wondering what the heck he got himself. Jim's longtime hairdresser, Isla, hovered nervously as he ran his fingers through her braids and claimed he was clean. He said he was done with that life. Martinez glanced up. His eyes were, and there were no paper trails or official indictment yet, but with the video showing Cam there, yeah, this is enormous. Camron's own crew rushed to control the story. A tiny group of assistants and publicists met in a tight room above a record shop in Bedford-Stuyvesant. One of them, Jasmine, opened up the most recent social media statistics on her laptop. Last left had 2 million views in 50 minutes, and the comments are ridiculous. Snitching, did he set him up? Where's his loyalty? She scrolled, her eyes widening. If we don't get ahead of this, Cam's career is toast a more experienced publicist, Antonio. Fifth over, we can't simply spin it because folks saw him there. We need context. To prove where he was before and after, we need a statement from Jim and, more significantly, Cam. Cam was nowhere to be located, and his phone went directly to voicemail. Social accounts went quiet. News spread that he checked himself into a private hideaway upstate. A so-called creative recharge sources felt he was laying low collecting the data, perhaps doubting his own role in law enforcement. Sources confirmed an increased inquiry. According to an unidentified officer in the narcotics section, the FI was monitoring the ring that exploited celebrities. Covered to trade designer medicines known on the street as nightmares. They moved secretly using encrypted chat applications and utilized industry gatherings for dissemination. Jim's identity appeared only after undercover agents recorded him. During repeated encounters in New York and Atlanta, the footage showed Jim passing off the box outside the warehouse was just the beginning. Detectives discovered security video of him entering a hotel room in Atlanta, with 2 guys subsequently jailed on narcotics charges. Phone records indicate that he arrived at exactly 2:17 a.m. "I am the principal agent, and I informed reporters." Although this is not a celebrity witch hunt, we have strong evidence to imply participation at higher levels. Back in Harlem, Rashida got a late-night call that shook her awake. It was Rashida's cousin Channel, who worked radio promotions, are asking for your comments on every station. They want to know what you saw. Rashida massaged her eyes, her voice thick. "I'm not. Jim is like a brother to me, and Pam is like family, and I can't simply out them like that. That folks already did." Channel responded that the second video is on every morning show. They're alleging he knew about it, and you're covering it for him. Rashida slammed the phone down, pulse hammering. She switched on the morning news and watched the headlines sink into drama. Cameron's Royals questioned following rapper's arrest. A banner appeared on the television. A shot of Jim arrested and scowling is next to a granny still of Cam leaning. Rashida disputed with Jim, who was split between devotion and self-preservation. Her next action is to either remain quiet and risk being complicit, or to speak out and risk. She alienated 2 of her closest friends by calling males and asking for assistance from them. Rashida noticed a calm, measured tone as he spoke. "The tension is larger than any of us. We need to safeguard the family, yet also respect the truth. If Cam is in that video, he deserves an explanation." Conspiracy theorists on Reddit have pulled together timeframes from event schedules and hotel check-ins and interview dates. One popular thread stated that Jim and Cam had utilized industry exhibitions as cover for meetings with the trafficking network. Another claimed a cryptic phrase in the current Jim Jones song, I moved silently through the night was an admission of guilt on Twitter by one user at Street Team. Wrote, if Cam's commitment was sincere, know the half-lived Rashida's solemn speech and select police news conference clips intended to throw them against each other, asking callers to select a side. All I know, he informed his engineer, was the ratings are going to soar from the corners of the internet to the halls of justice. Part 2 finishes. Rashida prepared to enter the limelight with her own account of events, balancing the weight of family, relationship, and reputation against the ravenous glare of the press. What she says next might alter everything once again. Stepped onto the improvised stage built up outside the precinct, stroking her brow with shaky fingertips before confronting the blazing lamps and eager expressions. A group of journalists scramble for she cleared her throat, positioned microphones surged forward like ravenous animals. Voice wavering, I have been asked whether I knew about any of this, and the answer is no. Not until I saw it with my own eyes. Jim Jones informed me he was working on new music, and I trusted him like family. Whispers spread across the audience. One cameraman cried out, "Are you covering for him?" Rashida's eyes flickered with pain. I'm covering up the truth. If he's guilty, I'll be the one the first to say so. Later that day, within a crowded conference room at Dipset Records, lawyers and counselors looked over evidence packets. On the table lay images of the 2 leaked tapes. Security cameras at the warehouse caught hotel room video from Atlanta, and printouts of the Jim's main lawyer, Marissa Flores, leaned across the table and read a damning text. We need to dig holes in the prosecution's timetable, she continued, rubbing her temples. At other occasions, the film may be circumstantial in nature. One investigator gazing at phone notifications noticed they'll want to separate the cases. Atlanta bargains, separate from the warehouse meeting. We must demonstrate that these points are related. The crew nodded, but the anxiety was heavy. One partner scoffed. We're battling a public spectacle, and the jury pool is the Camron emerged in the evening and provided a little audio clip. On his verified account, I've always stood for my family, and I'm collecting facts. Please be patient. It was just 30 seconds, yet it caused fresh controversy among supporters. There were 2 camps, those who interpreted Cam's silence as unity and those who perceived it as complicity. Hashtags moved between #Cam for clarification and #Cam for Jones. In the meanwhile, men stayed at home browsing through the chaos. I contacted Rashida, and she answered with a tired voice. They're tearing me apart, she said. I'm trying to speak up for the truth, but they won't allow me. Nink exhaled softly. You did what you had to do, sweetie. Now let the lawyers handle the rest. Keep your head up. He stopped, but watch your back. As part of damage control, Dipset's brand manager scheduled a meeting with Jim's core team, long-term supporters, street influencers, and local community leaders. The gathering took place in a storefront chapel converted into event space on 125th. Street posters of Dipset Records hung over a tiny stage with a solitary chair, awaiting Jim, but no one was sure whether he would show. Volunteers brought out bottled water, posters with support, if you believe in redemption, written in large letters. After an hour of passionate argument, a guest speaker, a renowned community elder, grabbed the microphone. We all know that errors occur, but we also know that atonement is real. Let's unite behind someone who elevated the city once before. Let's demonstrate compassion. Applause burst out, but skepticism lingered in the air. A cheeky local blogger muttered into a live stream microphone. Applause does not pay legal expenses elsewhere, a tabloid publication reported. Viewers had seen Camron on security film inside the warehouse 2 nights before his arrest. Not just in reaction, Camron's spokesperson made a statement that Mr. Camron cooperated completely with law enforcement. Any notion else is incorrect. He favors justice. Would handle these falsehoods in due time. Despite the pledge, online discussion has only grown louder with fake accounts, posting mashups of Camron as a detective in trench coats, mimifying. In the midst of the public outrage, Jim's family met in a tiny uptown apartment. His mother, aunt, and 2 younger sisters huddled around a laptop. During live transmission, Jim's mother's nostrils flared, exclaiming, They treat he behaved like a criminal. His aunt sniffled. He's always been troublesome, and I worry about him. That night, and identified Jim. Phone records connect him to the Atlanta suspects, and we have the text messages this beyond a reasonable doubt. His companion continued. We'll push for a quick indictment. Send the message that celebrities are not above the law. Outside protesters, some came to cry justice for Jim, while others yelled responsibility. A group of local activists carried posters saying, "Stop criminalizing success." Police and riot gear seen from it was a tumultuous situation with conflicting groups. Tasha Lee, a teenage YouTuber, navigated amid the chaos, desperate to get their views heard. While shooting for her channel, she approached a random attendee and said, "What do you think? Is Jim guilty?" The lady stopped. "I don't know, but everyone's trying to utilize this for views. Nobody's talking about the actual issue, the medications that are harming our young. It doesn't matter who sold them. We lost sight of the broader issue." Tasha agreed. That night, Jim Jones turned the debate into a criticism of social media hyperbole. In his first public appearance since his arrest, he stood on a low-rise platform at a community outreach program flanked by mentors and young groups, wearing a plain black tee and jeans. He seemed fatigued, and the crowd fell quiet. Raised a hand and welcomed, "Thank you everyone for being here. I'm not going to lie to you. This is horrible, but I'm not here to defend innocence or guilt. I'm here to tell you I love you, and I'm battling." A murmur of encouragement went through the audience as a young admirer cried, "We got you, Uncle Jim." Others repeated a cry of support backstage after when Jim addressed reporters. He took a big breath and said, "Yes, I was there. That warehouse, yeah, I met that guy, but you don't know why, which I'll explain." Cameras flashed in front of the judge. "Until then, I am innocent." A reporter inquired about the purported designer medicines. Jim's jaw clenched. "They paint me with names. Don't even recognize, give me time, give me a chance," as midnight neared. Scandal showed no signs of stopping, with the third video sample revealed. Voice note allegedly from Jim to Cam recorded days before the encounter. The audio was muffled, but the phrases were, "I received the box. Please let me know when to relocate it." The video terminated suddenly now. Viewers pondered if this was evidence of a conspiracy or another place diversion in the digital arena. XV agents conducted an underground podcast where they explored every facet of speculation. Wiretaps informants and the chance of a plea bargain. Callers discussed conspiracies. Theories range from connections to international cartos to inside jobs by competing musicians. Every new rumor produced a fresh tempest, and through it all, two names loomed large as Jim Jones and Camron, whose connection was previously praised as cool. Part 2 had given secrets and betrayals, and now the fate of Hop royalty hung in the balance. In Part 3, changing allegiances muddied the borders between good and wrong. Further, the war for truth and allegiance grew, and the world waited with eager anticipation for the next bombshell. The courtroom buzzed with anxiety as the preliminary hearing began the following morning. Rows of seats were packed with spectators, journalists, and inquisitive observers. Jim Jones sat at the defense table surrounded by his lawyers, eyes cast. Down the aisle, the prosecutor distributed the charges. Purpose to transport a banned narcotic over state borders, assisted and abetted by an accomplice named Solely. Tablac, the surveillance operation that led to Jim's arrest, weeks of wiretaps, clandestine buys, and overnight stakeouts. He mentioned the shaky warehouse film, the Atlanta hotel tape, and the leaked text messages of his voice remained steady, yet each detail provoked gasps from the audience. He finished with Cruz's claims that the information shows a pattern of transactions that point to a bigger distribution network. Sat down murmuring filled the room floors. Jim's lawyer stood to begin her response. She talked with controlled calm, accepting some of the facts but disputing its importance. The government's case is primarily based on supposition and circumstantial footage. She contended that there is no conclusive proof that the drug exchange was unlawful, and we had no lab reports or chain of custody. Demonstrates my client's entitlement to the assumption of innocence outdoors. The news media crowded the courts like vultures, with anchors reporting live and flashing headlines that the Dip dynasty would disintegrate. Does royalty survive scandal? Tweets with the hashtag Jones shearing trended. Fans countrywide on social media fell into two groups, those wanting fast justice and those decrying a rush to judgment. The tale had moved beyond the personal into a cultural later in the day. In a poorly lighted florist and her crew calmed over discovery.